welcome back to Bunter's Yard, and today just a quick weathering on this lovely Class 58 from Hornby. I say it's lovely because it's just I just like the colours and the look of the Class 58 personally. So yeah, just going to do nothing, just a little bit subtle today. Well, subtle-ish for me, I guess. So I didn't want to go too wild on this. I had a look at a few, and they all seem to weather in a similar way. So one of the things I noticed that these vents at the back, they would obviously go quite sooty, as with those the exhaust at the top where the fans are, and then the front and the back we're just gonna dirty that up a little bit with some oils. So we'll start off with our black oil. So this is oil paint from Brownie, and we're just going to use straight from the tube. Just need a little bit, and we're going to mix it down with some oils to make a wash. And this is a low odor thinner, especially for oil paint. Make sure you get the right one. And I'm just going to mix it down really thinly. It takes a little while to you get the idea of the consistency once you've used it a few times and how runny it needs to be. Use a brush that's bigger than probably you think you're going to need, because it needs to hold a bit of the oil in there, so we can sort of dip it in and then let it do its own thing. You'll see what I mean. So there we go. So we're just going to touch that in on all of those vents, and just like a little puddle, and it will find its way, and it will rest in the, you can see it better in the yellow, it will rest in the sort of detail area, and then you can see the vents. Don't worry about too much about going over, try not to brush it on. We're just going to dab it in place at the moment, and as it dries, you'll start to see the effect a little bit clearer. So we need to go through all of these. Takes a little while. I'm going to leave them all in the edit for you so you can watch, as interested as this is ever going to be. Now, I've said before, one of the good things about oils, and really, if you haven't got any full weathering, something you should really practice with. I had it for a couple of years before I really got to use them quite consistently, and they're used on pretty much every single build that I do at the moment. The good thing about the oils is that if it is wrong, you can just with your thinners, you can just clean it off and start again. If you go over the edge, just clean the edge off. It stays wet and workable for quite a long time. You can reactivate it quite easily with thinners, the following day. So if you come back in the morning and you don't like the effect, you can take the whole thing off, which you can't do with enamels and acrylics. Not quite as easily anyway. So there we go. So we're just going to let that dry a little bit, maybe a little bit too much on the left there. And these vents at the bottom here, I'm just going to colour them in a little bit, just to add a little bit of a wash in as well. We don't want to colour them completely black like the top grills. Just add a bit of colour in, just to sort of highlights the detail a little bit. And what we're doing here is, sort of the classic sort of pin wash. So just in between the panel lines, just to sort of highlight those, or actually low light, because we couldn't put a shadow. The effect is of the shadow, which you don't get on sort of scale models because the detail is quite shallow. So if we touch the oils, the thinned oils in, capillary action will sort of drag that down into all the areas that you can see between the panels, between the doors, and that just gives a sense of scale a little bit more on smaller models. Now we're using black here. You can obviously use different colours if you want to use like a dirt grime sort of sleeper grime sort of shade. You can do that as well, and it just looks like ingrained dirt, or just where it has been cleaned properly. And don't worry about the little marks where we've gone over. You can see we've got a brush here. That's just a dry brush at the moment, and you can just brush it off if you choose. Or you can dampen your brush with thinners, so just a little bit of thinners. Wipe it back on a tissue as much as you can, and then you can clean it off a bit more accurately. To be fair, on the side of this Loco, if we get some streaks of dirt, it really doesn't matter, because that's going to all add to the effect. So that's dried off a little bit, obviously not fully, but I've just a few places that I missed. I just want to add a little bit more in, just to make the effect a little bit more heavy. And this is on the other side. I just wanted to show you this pin wash again. So capillary action basically takes it down. You haven't got to paint the whole line in, just touch the top, and then capillary action will just drag the oils into all the places where it needs to go. You can see it sort of sucking away there, and just it's quite a subtle effect, but it does add to the overall effect. So it's definitely worth trying, but make sure your oils are really thinned well, obviously not too thin, otherwise the effect will be gone. And we're going to do that on the roof as well, so we're going to fill in these exhaust vents on the top. They don't go too mad. They're not going to be, completely plastered in soot as some models, and I've been guilty of that as well. This particular look I don't think warrants them to be completely black, so you're just going to get a bit of soot in there. And there you can see the capillary action working probably clearer than on some of the other shots. So just literally touch it into one end, and then the action just drags it through. Do some of the panel joins here as well. Maybe a little bit more oil on that one, I think. There we go. You can do a similar thing on the front and the back, or the ends. I'm not sure if there is a front and a back, but anyway, either end. So we're going to use the black again, just to touch in around the details. Quite a bit of detail on the front. So this pipe that goes along the front, and then just all the little details, the lamp holders and the lights, and all the brake pipes, so on that's on the front. We don't need to take too much care, again, because we can wipe this back once it's dried. If it's too much, just get your damp brush, and then you can just clean away the bits you don't want. It's probably worth waiting for it to dry, and then you'll see some of the sort of tide marks where the wash sort of abruptly ends. You need to get rid of those. They don't always look totally accurate. Do the same to the other end. So we're using this is actually dark brown rather than using the black. So the dark brown would be just simulates the sort of the dirt and the grime that would have built up at the front and the back. We'll add some more colours into it in a little bit. So you can see the tide marks there, and we need to clean those off in a little bit. So we're going to add in, so I'm doing this a bit of a funny angle, so do apologise, but yeah, you get the effect. So this is like grime that's going to be on the front of the Loco, and when it goes through its wash, it doesn't get cleaned properly, or the rain comes down, and you see that bit there is protected by the rainfall, protected from the rainfall from that pipe there. So we're just gonna brush that back a little bit, so you just get some grime up there in that sort of area, and then we can maybe tease it around with a brush in a bit. Got a slightly better angle now for me to work on, and we're just using a really damp brush. This is just in thinners, really almost dry. I'll just wipe this on a tissue, and we just do these downward strokes just to simulate any rain that would wash down on the front of the Loco. So you need to wait for your oils to dry fully. I've probably gone a little bit too soon on this, but I just wanted to get this all in the video. So we're going to add some sort of black to the roofs around the vents, and this is Vallejo Air black. So Vallejo Air is an acrylic that comes straight from the pot and doesn't need mix. It's already pre-mixed. It's quite nice and thin, so it doesn't give if you're careful, it doesn't give you a complete sort of coverage, doesn't make everything go black. So we're just adding this little sooty effect. And I've said before that I don't normally use just anything that's completely black. I have on this one because I know that I'm only going to add sort of a shade, and I'm not colouring anything in it. If it was going to go heavier, then I would probably mix browns into it. But this is just pure Vallejo Air black, and the airbrush is down to maybe about 10 or 15 psi. It's quite low. That just means that I can have a fine mist rather than blasting it with the colour and covering everything. Just gives you a bit more control. Do a bit around those vents on the side as well, and you can see it's just really not covering a lot as we go. It's just really quite subtle, which is not like me. And just to tie these in together, we're doing a similar thing here, but really lightly. Because in fairness, you know, if the soot's coming out of the event, then the doors are not going to be completely clean, are they? So we're just going to add a bit of colour in then, just to sort of tie that in. And then the fronts around these balls, they seem to get quite dirty as well. So on the fronts, we're using a colour from Vallejo, which is called Dirt, so it's quite obvious what colour that is. Need to test these out. On the yellow it looks fine, it's coming out that sort of nice dirt colour. Maybe got a bit of a green tinge along the buffer beam there, because it's covering just onto black. That's one of the things with Vallejo Air, is that you know, they're quite thin as they come from the pot, so you may want to choose different colour or give it a couple of coats down there. So we've changed our colour now to another Vallejo colour called Dark Earth, and this is just a grimy colour that I sort of like. And we're going along the side again, not too heavy, we don't want it completely covered, but the bogies will get obviously the bulk of the dark earth here, and then just along this this rail here. Again, the pressure's low on the brush, still at that sort of 10 to 15 psi, so it doesn't sort of splatter out everywhere. Make sure you get underneath as well, and then just on the sides of the Loco, really just a very fine coating of this dark earth. It's just to add sort of general overall grime. We don't want it covered again. And then back to our Vallejo Air black, and just to add in some little grease effects all around the axles. So the last couple of stages, we're now on our weathering powders, and this just adds nice sort of subtleties and sort of ties things together. So there we go, dark earth from Hornby, it's one of my, as you know, my favourite colours, and we're just going to touch this in really gently, just around the springs and these little axle, they're not axle boxes, are they, but these sort of hangers. So rather than using it straight from the pot, I put it into the well of the palette, and then I can just take it a little at a time. It's so easy to get too much on your brush and just get it everywhere, and it can be quite a chore to get it off. Once you've gone too far, it's quite difficult with powders. You'd think they'll come off easy, but they don't. They just stick everywhere. So adding it in the places that I think it would, build up, whether it does or not in real life, I don't know. Along the front again, or the back, whatever that is. Again, it's a really quite a subtle thing. All these different layers we're adding on, all the washes and pin washes and different things, they will make a difference to the overall effect, but we need to be subtle rather than too over the top. So now we've got our powders on, and we need to protect everything, and we're doing that with again, this is a Vallejo matte varnish, which is mixed 50 to 50 in thinners, and we're just going to cover the whole model in this. I tend to do the first layer quite lightly, and that just holds the powders in place. Otherwise, you go too heavy with your airbrush, you'll just rinse everything away with too much lacquer. So yeah, just go gently, and then I'll go around the whole model again. Now, I've not worried about the windows here. We're going to clean these back in a minute. On other models, I've masked them off to give like the wiper effect. I'm not going to do it on this particular one. Instead, I'm just going to clean it as if it hasn't rained for a while anyway, and someone's just come along and cleaned this off. Now, I've used airbrush cleaner for this. Works better than airbrush thinners. So airbrush cleaner, and we're just going to basically clean a bit out of the middle. Wipe on, wipe off. And then our final stage is for the grease. So it's grease on the on the buffers here. So this is, as you can see from AK Interactive, this is shafts and bearing grease, and it's an enamel, so it needs to be put on last because it will have a slightly sort of glossy finish when it dries, given that effect of sort of wet grease. So again, in the places you think it's going to be, so I would have thought on the springs and on the bottom of those axle boxes or hangers or whatever they are, and then probably from somewhere down there and on that tank. So you don't need to be too precise with this, because it's the way it works, it will just find its own place, especially on those springs down the bottom. What I've done here, I didn't want it to look like it's too sort of wet and recent, so we're just going to stipple it in with a dry brush, and it just leaves an oily patch, which is the effect we're after. And that's pretty much done. The only thing you need to do after this, which I'm not going to show, is you need to clean all the wheels, because there will be paints and lacquers on those, and that will probably inhibit any sort of pickup from the track. So just make sure you clean them off properly. Thanks again for joining us and watching. Hope you've enjoyed this one. We'll see you very, very soon. You have a good day now.